Welcome to Empire Building. I'm Wendy Papazan, and together with my 4 co-hosts, we bring you weekly unfiltered conversations about leadership, growing a big empire, and living on your own terms.
I'm Kimber Lovett-Minkiti. We are investors and wealth builders with over $75 million in combined net worth.
I'm Sarah Reynolds. We are visionaries who built more than 50 businesses with over $122 million in annual revenue.
I'm Tiffany Fikes. We've led thousands of people and do it all while being pretty good moms.
And I'm Seychelle Van Poole. We are your podcast to learn how to build big businesses and even bigger lives.
Hi, Empire Builders. Welcome back to another episode of our Empire Building podcast. I am Kimber Lovett-Minkiti, and I'm joined by my incredible co-host, Sarah Reynolds. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Kimber.
Hi. I love it. We are actually continuing our scaling series. We've been doing a series all about sort of the steps to scaling, and this is the second part of our sales series. So if you joined us last week, if you didn't, you need to go back and get caught up. We really went deep into the first 3 playbooks on scaling, right? How do you define your client type, like your avatar? Who are you actually serving, and define that in your systems? We talked about the conversations and dialogues that create confidence and consistency, which is really going to help you build that conversion. And we wrapped up with the follow-up systems that ultimately win the game. And so today we are going to dive into the next 3. And I'm excited because we're going to give you the whole package so that you're ready to scale and build that powerful, scalable system.
So excited. Let's go.
Let's dive into playbook number 4, which I love this step, which is really the salesperson launch system. What is your learning management system? So what you need here, right, is a reputable, like a clear way that's repeatable, which is a system, right, to train your people at scale. Now, this I think is so powerful because so often in both the sales world and in the operations world, a lot of times we're like, hey, here's like we throw a book at them, or I mean, now it's like, here, watch this video, plug this in. And we're like, I don't understand why the results aren't the same as the results we were getting. And so this is the place, right? Do you have a centralized place that is your learning management system? This talks about the conversations you do, how you say it, the processes, your training videos. The key piece here that's been a game changer for us is you should be recording everything. Record everything. So if you're doing a training, if you're having a conversation, the challenge you have, right, that burnout that we're talking about is when you have to repeat the conversation 20 times. You're like, oh my God, this is the 5th time I've coached on this thing. Well, you shouldn't be, right? Like you should be like having that recorded so that you're creating this library. It's not that you have to like, oh my God, don't be overwhelmed that think you've got to sit down and like write down all your systems and treat all this training. No, you're building it as you're doing it. And that is what is creating your library. So onboarding, nothing should depend on one singular person. So the same way we're saying, where's your avatar? Make sure that your buyer, your profile, this is the system of how we do it here. Your training is exactly the same way. And this should be consistent. When a new salesperson onboards, this is what they get. This is what they learn. This is what our training, this is what our boot camp looks like. This is the process. They come out the other side and they really understand what your systems are. It allows for a faster ramp-up time. You're consistent across those locations as you're scaling. This is a big one for us. Like we've got 10 locations like tight in the Mid-Atlantic, but I can't get them all together. So we have to have ways that they are consistently implementing. And so we did it this year. It's like everybody does trainings on the same profile, like, right? Everyone's got a team meeting happening the exact same week. So when we train on the team meeting and we prep, everybody's doing it the same, whether you're in Virginia Beach, Baltimore, or Washington, D.C., that's exactly the same. And if it lives in the person, right? If a training is living in anything, right? If the information lives in a single person, your incredible director of sales, then you cannot scale it. Like you cannot scale it. And that's what you have to ask. And find yourself, like if you ask a question in your organization and somebody says, I need to call this person, you don't have a system. So use that as like an indicator. If you're thinking about like, where does this live? How do we do this? And you've got to go to a who, not a process, then you're missing a system that's going to challenge you when it's time to scale.
I'm passionate about this week in particular because we were running into some issues with just some of the parts of our sales pipeline. And we just upgraded our entire onboarding system and learning management system. And as I was auditing it, issue we are having is because we missed that part of clarity in the onboarding process. And so it's literally very fresh this week. I was working in it as early as this morning. And just like, well, no wonder this piece is struggling. Like we assumed they knew that, and that wasn't built into our onboarding process. So such gold here.
I have learned this from you, and like even just visiting your office, you as the CEO of your owner of your company you're checking the system. Like I think so often we just like set it and forget it, and then we never go back. And when something is off, if you've already scaled and you're like, something's off, you go right into it. And that's been a big lesson for me. Sometimes I think as your organizations get bigger, your leaders want to protect you. And so my leaders will say like, oh, don't worry about that. You don't need to be looking at onboarding. And I'm like, yes, I do, because something is off in that system. And I need to see the system, see what we're doing, see how we're like what our people are doing to often figure out. Like you might be able to put a clear look and you see it, right? Like you can clearly see it. And sometimes like that's the piece. Don't think that like you are going to have to dive into your business. This isn't a set it and forget it world. If you're the active leader, that you got to be willing to go in there, look at the system, look at the process, understand what's going on. And I'm always like, put me on the automation. I want to see it. I want to see it, how the client receives it. Because that also, I'm like, oh my God, well, no wonder no one's opening this. This looks like crap. I'm actually on the other end. Right?
That's so true, Kimber. And that's, no one knows it as good as like the founder. Like most of our listeners, right? You guys are empire builders. You're building an empire. You know what they're supposed to say at this point or what the original intent was, right? A good example of that I found was like, we have a process of how to book a second face-to-face appointment when a seller doesn't sign. And in all of our coaching sessions, it kept coming up that there was confusion about like what to say to the seller. And I was like, I do not understand why everyone's confused. Well, I found out that the last person that recorded that video for onboarding messed up the script. And so everyone was learning. And then I was coming into coaching and saying it one way. And then everyone was like, wait, what? That's not what we just learned. Like, or when we onboarded. And it's like, I caught that. Like, oh my, it was something small that appears small, but actually it had such a ripple effect. And so you got to inspect, you got to get into it. How you know where to inspect actually leads us to playbook number 5, okay, is you want to track the entire conversion pipeline. Okay, you cannot fix what you cannot see. Okay, so as the empire builder and or if you are a entrepreneur, that you are a leader of sales, right? Then you need to track every stage. What does that mean? You're tracking how many leads you got last week. How many of those leads did you have conversations with? How many of those conversations turned into appointments? How many appointments happened that was set? How many happened, then turned into agreements? How many of those agreements turned into under contract? How many under contract turned into sold, right? When you track each of those things across your salespeople, so every salesperson's being tracked, and then it's a roll up to you as the leader and or to the sales leader, right? Whoever's role that is that owns this, right? If you see that appointment to agreement goes down, which is what happened in my world, right? And I'm like, okay, so what are the key parts of our conversion process from appointment to agreement? Well, one of them is that second appointment. Well, what's going on with our booking second appointment? Well, then I dove into it. And then I was able to find, okay, they're not booking it the right way. Okay. And so then I'm retraining it, I'm fixing it. But the numbers told me where to look. Like at what part of the process are the numbers down? And then we believe and we teach at Empire Circle, you literally look at a trending week over week, right? And you're able to see trends. Like you can look at a 4-week trend. If you went from 60% conversion to 30% conversion over 4 weeks, okay, that's a problem. Something changed in the last 4 weeks, right? And so you want to look at where you're losing people. Maybe you don't have enough leads to begin with, okay? Or is it a conversion problem, right? The numbers will always tell you where the problem is. You got to look, just trust the numbers and dive into that part of the problem and fix that part.
It'll also help you, know where to coach, right? Because for some people, it's a conversion at one area, right? Like it's a conversion from the appointment to the agreement. Other people, it's the agreement to getting them signed, right? So understanding both the numbers at the high level, but then also your individual salespeople's numbers, because then you get it. Like sometimes you can hide in the big number, right? And the roll up. So as a leader, you have to be able to then also look down and say, okay, well, let's look across. Where is this person? And it allows you to then highlight, do you have somebody that's got a really high conversion rate? And you want to understand, like, what are they doing? Because again, you've got a system. So are they doing something different in the process? Are they implementing in a different way that we can all learn from versus the opposite? How do you actually coach to it? And so I think there's something really powerful and I found like my team, it was an incredible lead challenge Q1 because I was like on them about these numbers and people were really struggling. Back to your system. What's the system to be able to track that? What automations did we have? What was missing? And people kept giving me back just the number. And I was like, no. I don't want just the 15. I want to know where that data is pulling from so that I can look at it. And what we were realizing in some of those that the automations being set up, it was pulling like the reports were creating like the numbers weren't valid. And so really having to like stay on that, because sometimes as a leader, you can be like, everything's great. These numbers look amazing. But when you're not inspecting where the number comes from, what's inside of that number, what's the conversion, and then double checking it, like, does that sound right? Right? Does that look right? Because this is how in a month, right, you can you're not just looking in the rearview mirror, like when the P&L comes out, you're actually able to then influence what's happening and fix it before you're saying like, oh no, we have a bigger problem. So I think it's really important to dive into those numbers, not just look at just the number, understanding where the number's tracking back from and really investigate that when something isn't consistent with what you would expect from the business. All right, we're going to dive into playbook number 6. And this is one that it's an interesting like leadership lesson, like, right, as I continue, all of us, right, evolve from being on the field to like being the coach and then owning the team. Like, what are those things? And this is the one that I would say as the leader, like holding yourself accountable to. Coaching and training cadence is a non-negotiable. Like, what is that coaching and training cadence? The sales skills are, and we are in like never before a skill-based market, skill-based industries where skill matters. So this I have like held, it's at the top of my 411 every single week is, did we hold the cadence? Did we do the thing that we were supposed to do? It's the number one thing that I hold my leaders accountable for. Where's your 411s for your team? Did you hold your one-on-ones? Did we do the trainings that we said we were going to do? Because if our people don't have the skill, they're not going to be successful. And today more than ever. So I love it. I mean, Sarah, you guys have a great coaching cadence that you hold. And like, this is just a non-negotiable. And I make that very clear to my leaders. Like, this is my expectation. And like if it didn't get done, then that's the first question I'm asking them.
Yeah. And I think what has helped us is looking at training and coaching as like more in groups. We have found that we actually learn better in a group across the Power Home. So our cadence, we've got 10 locations all throughout the United States. A lot of them on the East Coast, but we're in Texas, we're in Colorado, right? And so we have a cadence that we follow where every salesperson gets on during this cadence. Okay. So Mondays, we do business coaching where we talk about, so every agent for their own business, we have a business tracker that they open up their business tracker and it shows their numbers from last week. And the area of their conversion pipeline that they need work on turns red. So they know, okay, I need to work on from signed to on the market. Okay. And then they go into a room where a sales leader coaches that room on that part of the sales pipeline, because that's the part their business needs coaching in. We might, we have a guest speaker coming in that's going to be talking about how they should be getting paid in their LLC. It's higher level business coaching to help our agents. That's every Monday. Okay. And it's on their business specifically, not in Power Home's business. It's on their business, okay? Tuesdays, we do role play. We call it briefing room for fun. I'm not sure why, but that's what we call it. Wednesdays, we have conversion coaching. And what that looks like is all the agents that went on appointments earlier in the week that didn't sign, they come on and they'll tell me, I went on this appointment. This is what happened. They didn't sign. And then I ask them questions and then I coach them on how to go get it signed. This is what I want you to do next. And or next time they say this is what you should do, right? Thursday is our sales training. So that's mixed into our team meeting. I believe when you're running a sales organization, team meetings should always include sales training. And so that's on Thursdays. And then Fridays is back to conversion coaching. So they bring their scenarios. It's real life scenarios that they're getting coached on as they're happening. And it's all in a group to where everyone is learning from each other.
So often, like, right, you see people who are like, I don't want to like do the real thing, right? Like they want to do their calls in private or they don't want anybody to hear it. And I think when you bring this out into the open and you make it like that which is personal is universal, even in our businesses. And so if they're struggling with something, it's likely that somebody else is struggling with it too. And the more that we bring that forward and have it be a real life active thing right now that everybody can learn from, I think is such a key piece of how we help the cadence that people can really grow and succeed in. So I love that, Sarah.
Yeah. So you've got to remember to train. You got to have some type of cadence, just like Kimber and I just shared. And you got to do it often, right? I did a training yesterday on negotiations that I also trained a year ago. And I got like 15 messages from my agent saying, this new material was amazing. It was the best training we ever got. And I'm just laughing because I'm like, you guys got it a year ago. Like these weren't new agents that said this to me. And the key is like, you got to repeat it. Right? You got to repeat it and share it and train it like it's the first time they're hearing it. Because a lot of times they think it is. Okay. Because they forget. Like every few months, your team members and you forget what your job is. You got to remind them and remind yourself what the job is. Okay.
And I think, Sarah, not leveraging that too fast, right? Because I think a lot of times what happens is that the leader gets busy doing other things. And maybe you're trying to buy back time so you can do other things that maybe aren't in your business. And that's okay. But you have to make sure like where we show up sends a very clear message about what's important. And so I found that sometimes my leaders are saying to me, Kimber, you don't need to be on this call. You don't really need to be on this. But I have to be careful because where I don't show up and the conversations I am not participating in, like we're scaling our business right now, right? It sends a message to them. And so I think the fact, Sarah, that you're giving the example as somebody who's leading, right, one of the top sales organizations in the country, that you are doing this sends a message that this is important. And so I think sometimes in our businesses, we should be paying attention to the skill set of the person at the front of the room that is pouring into coaching, building the skills of your team. And if that person, right, isn't like somebody you would want to listen to and learn from, you should be asking, is that the right person to be doing that? And should I be doing this? Because I think oftentimes we're getting leverage, right? But be careful, especially in this area, because this is the skill. This is the thing that's going to differentiate you. And who's pouring into, who's helping develop that? Who's doing your video? Go back and watch your videos, right? Who's the voice in your video? Is that the voice that represents your brand? Is that the voice that's best positioned to tell the story and train your people? And I think we've been asking that question a lot lately too. And so I think I love that. I don't want to miss that you were the one that is doing a lot of these trainings.
Yeah, no, that's good. The last playbook, which you could argue is critically important, is you want to build a culture of shared learning, which this sort of goes with what we were talking about with training. But I think we want to double down on it because it's so important to scale. Is like, it's really hard to scale sales when everything is siloed, when questions are siloed. You know, what I did was I found myself, like before, a lot of questions used to come to me in my office or used to come to me in an email, like a one-on-one email. And I would find myself answering the same question over and over and over and over again. So much so that one time an agent came into my office and it was a question that I had answered literally 5 times that week. And I snapped at that agent, which was not right of me. I was so frustrated, like, I'm going to have to answer this question again, right?
Again.
But that agent didn't know I answered it 4 other times and they still need help, right? And so what I learned to do was I learned that it needs to be in a shared learning type of communication system to where everyone can learn. So you're either coaching in a group like I just talked about, or you're coaching in Slack where everyone can read. They can ask the question and they can read the answer at the same time. Okay. Now, to do that, I think I just want to mention what Kimber said, because I think there was so much wisdom. That was such an EQ, emotional intelligence thing to mention about how hard it can be for salespeople to ask a question in a room, right? Or in a group, right? And I want to share for a moment to be able to do this the right way, or a way to be effective. Like, your people will not ask questions in Slack or will not ask questions in front of their peers if they feel like they're going to be made to look stupid, or if they feel like it's going to embarrass them, right? If those two things happen, then they just won't ask. And then you don't have a shared learning system, right? You don't have a culture of shared learning. So what I learned that's really important is one of the first things new agents learn on our team is how we define vulnerability. Actually, it's how we define strength. And how we define strength at Empower Home is its vulnerability. The person that admits that they need help, that asks a question, is actually the strongest person in the room. So the day one on our team, they learn that strength means being vulnerable. And so it's viewed as a good thing. The person that asks the question is actually the strongest one in the room. They get praised for it. That is such a great question. Thank you for asking it. Like, they get extra recognition because they ask the questions. If you don't build a culture around shared learning and a culture around that questions are good, then it's really hard to do, right? So you want to find an internal communication platform. We use Slack, where they can ask questions, as well as the group coaching. And then you want to encourage questions publicly. You want to share wins, right? So what I love to do is that they ask a question in coaching in front of 40 other agents, right? And they go out, they do what they were coached to do, and they get the listing. Well, instead of the next day us saying, James got a new listing, we say James got a new listing because he executed what he learned at coaching. Okay. And so you're tying the wins to the learning, to the growth, right? And then you also want to encourage sharing challenges, right? Something that we believe in at Her Best Life is to start a lot of conversations with vulnerability. Because when we start conversations with vulnerability, like when we share a challenge that we're having, and we're the founders of Empire Circle, right? We're the founders of it, then the whole room says, I can share a challenge too. Right? Because they're willing to, right? And so it gives permission for everyone to learn faster. It gives permission. And really what ends up happening is knowledge compounds. They don't even realize that they're learning when they're hearing another person's problem. And then literally a week later, they're like, I have that same problem. And now I know what to do. And so then you compound it. And then all of a sudden you just have such fast growth across your organization. So,
there was so much wisdom there. I mean, I think that what I heard you saying, which I think is so important, is this idea of the raising your hand. I think especially sometimes in these cultures where it's expected that I already know the thing, or there's an assumption that right, you're trying to be the best and be on the leaderboard, that vulnerability and asking for help or not knowing is a weakness. And I think it's one of the fastest ways that people burn out. They're struggling because they're struggling in silence. And so when you open up the world and you open up and you help acknowledge that these are questions and celebrate the questions, it is so powerful. It's one of the things that our organization we're really struggling with, is getting our leaders in particular to raise their hand and ask for help. And I think this idea that it's praised when it's done, that it's not knocked down, that it is really a win, and tying back the lesson that was learned there to the success is a lesson whether you're scaling or not, right? Making sure your team, we hear this a lot when people are like, I brought somebody in and I poured into them, and then they're doing 5 transactions and now they want to leave my team. Because they didn't tie back the thing that they were learning to the success that they had, and making those connections as the leader. That's your responsibility to help them see the connection, because they might not see it. They might just think, I'm so amazing. Now I sold 5 houses. What do I need you for? But tying back that this is how you now are going to go from 5 to 50. How are you going to get to your goals, because you've got this learning base and culture of learning that's going to help accelerate you there, is so powerful. So
that's right.
All right, so we're going to put all this together.
Yes.
What do we need to do next?
Yeah. Okay. So if your sales feel inconsistent, it's not your people, it's your process, right? And so we shared with you all of the different processes and playbooks that you need to have to build a scalable sales team. And so we've got a challenge for you. So Kimber and I are so big on executing. We do not like to teach unless people do something about it.
Take
okay,
action.
Take action, because we want to impact your life. We want to impact your business. We want to impact your life. And so what our challenge for you this week is to identify one stage of the pipeline that's weak and build or refine the system for that stage. Okay, so pick one and then build or refine the system for that stage. And because scaling sales is not about doing more, it's about doing the right things consistently. So let's build those systems and let's refine them to where your team can do that. And I can't let this episode go without mentioning something that both Kimber and I are super passionate about. We're passionate about this topic of scaling, and in particular, scaling sales, because that's who actually makes the biggest impact across your world. Because if you don't have new business to serve, you don't have anything, right? And we're so passionate about it that at Her Best Life Empire Circle, we have what we call build hers. So these are coaching groups and consulting groups that focus on your business and or your life. And one of our Build Hers is actually all around scaling your business, okay? And so what this is it's a once a month Zoom that we do where we coach. We go deeper into everything we talked about today, like really deep into everything we talked about today. We're giving you conversations. We're giving you templates. Like we are literally helping you build a scalable sales business and also other things as well. And you don't just get access to that, right? That's just one of our Build Hers.
That's one little piece, right?
Yeah, that's one little piece. Okay. But with that, you also get access to accountability. So we're holding, Kimber and I lead our business Build Her, and in particular, our scaling one. And in that, we're giving accountability to where we're saying, okay, in the next month, this is what you need to have built out, and this is how you do it. And then they come back the next month and we help make sure that it's good. And then we focus on the next phase. And so if this is something that you want to grow more in and you want coaching more around it and accountability, we would love to encourage you to go to herbestlife.com, look at Empire Circle, start a discovery call. No, you won't get Meghan Markle, but you'll get Kimber and you will get Sarah. And book a discovery call to find out if maybe Empire Circle is something for you, because that is a big focus of Empire Circle, is how to truly build a big business, but not just a big business, an even bigger life. So book that discovery call and we would be honored to help you execute on everything we talked about today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you guys. Have a great week.
This podcast is for general informational purposes only. The views, thoughts, and opinions of the guest represent those of the guest and not Keller Williams Realty LLC and its affiliates, and should not be construed as financial, economic, legal, tax, or other advice. This podcast is provided without any warranty or guarantee of its accuracy, completeness, timeliness, or results from using the information.